Now, statewide candidates on the Republican side, are you listening to this right now? Clip this part, you guys, and tell them to listen to this. 4 million active registered voters, 1 million Republican, 1 million Democrats, 2 million unaffiliated that go 60-40 Democrat-Republican. If you take the unaffiliated and split them and put them into their camps, I call them URs and UDs, we have a 500,000 voter gap for the midterms because turnout is not as great for the midterms as it is for a presidential race. 500,000 votes that we as Republicans have to win over, move, change in order to win statewide. What does that mean? Well, if we only get 70% or so Republican turnout, 70% of Republican turnout is about 700,000 versus 300,000 people that stay home and don't complete their ballot. 300,000 voters that you candidates, statewide candidates, have to get to show up to vote. The other thing you've got to do is get another couple 100,000 of unaffiliated voters who typically vote Democrat. Last election cycles, they voted Democrat to show up to vote for you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Unleashed. This is Heidi, your host. I'm so excited today to do a deep dive on election integrity. This is an issue that we haven't covered in quite a while, and there's been so much that's gone on since the last time we talked about it. Now, Colorado seems to be the center of the action for all things election integrity, starting with Tina Peters, who's still in jail, a Gold Star mom, who did pretty much what Jenna Griswold did when she leaked the passwords. Although I tend to believe that Jenna, it was a bit more nefarious with her. You know, I do think she needs to be held accountable, but lots of other things have happened as well. We had a cast vote record changed out in Arapahoe County. I'll explain more what that is later. But let's go back to the 22 election when I ran for governor, and the following weeks after the election, I kind of scratched my head like, golly geez, that did not feel like that kind of a loss on the ground. And so myself and another candidate from Highlands Ranch who was running for state house, running for re-election, who lost in an R+12 district. So a district where he should have won by 12 points. A Republican should have won by 12 points. We actually went to the Republican county clerk in Douglas County and asked for a recount within days of the election. And we prepared all of our paperwork and did all the right things, used an attorney, showed up to ask the logic and accuracy testing be done a certain way before we actually did the recount. And we're met with a letter from Jenna Griswold, our Secretary of State, telling us that we were not allowed to do it the way we wanted to. And that caught us off guard. We're like, why is our Republican clerk kind of cohorting with Jenna Griswold and not allowing us to do the recount the way we want to? Well, that put off our spidey senses. And so we asked to do some things in the coming weeks after that we were met with a lot of roadblocks to look at the election and what happened in our Republican Douglas County, my home county, Kurt's home county. So it took about 9 months and a lot of money, I think probably about $30,000, to get permission to look at the paper ballots and actually do our own scanning of those ballots so that we could take a look and see what we thought was going on, if anything. So we did that. We scanned over 83,000 ballots using our own scanners. We had volunteers come in and help the staff who actually had to handle the ballots. And we took high resolution images so we could look at those ballots. And we looked at lots of different components of the election. The cast vote record, which is a spreadsheet that the machine kind of spits out with every single ballot's results. It doesn't identify the voter at all, but it's kind of the Bible for how the vote's laid out. And I believe that's what they used to send to the Secretary of State to report on the election. The other thing that we noticed was the signature verification was kind of bumped up on election day. It was higher than it had been in the week or two before that. We also saw a high turnout of unaffiliated voters. We noticed that the Dropboxes were not really secure. Like the video footage from the Dropboxes was not clear. It wasn't easy to see, and no one was really monitoring it. We also asked some questions about Wi-Fi remote access in our voting equipment. And we asked the county clerk, we asked the county attorney if there was any way it was possible to connect to the internet through the machines. And we were told absolutely not. But what we had was the purchase order of the equipment, which showed that there was access. There was cards in the machines so that you could remotely access the machines. Well, fast forward a bit, we ended up finding out that Douglas County wasn't the only one. There were 12 counties that Matt Crane, the head of the Clerks Association, finally admitted to. So lots of little things that we found. At the same time, Bob Cooper, who's with Colorado Institute for Fair Elections and one of the volunteers that was helping us, had done some auditing and requests for information around the post office. Now, guys, when the post office sends out all the ballots and they come back undeliverable, they are supposed to invoice the county clerk for those undeliverable ballots. What we found was in 9 counties, there were over 30,000 ballots that were unaccounted for, which was pretty concerning, right? That's weird. They should know where these undeliverable ballots went, and they should account for those. That's the U.S. Post Office's job around these ballots, according to federal law. So here we find this abnormal situation with the U.S. Post Office. We find out that the Secretary of State had actually lied, that access to the internet was not removed in the trusted build of these machines. She said that in December of 2020, and that indeed our Douglas County machines had remote Wi-Fi access cards in them, and we were told that they weren't. We also found out that the Dropboxes were not secure like we thought they were. And we already knew that the voter rolls weren't really clean. And by clean, I mean, are dead people removed from the voter rolls? Is everyone a citizen who has the right to vote that's on those voter rolls? Are they not voting in other places? Are the voter rolls accurate? And we had a strong suspicion that they weren't, but we couldn't verify that because we can't get access to a lot of the information to do so. We also were a bit concerned about the signature verification being so much higher in rejections on election day. And we found out that there's not really anyone who audits signature verification rates. Like, no one really knows if it works. What we need to do is get outside experts in to look at these signature verification machines and the process and make sure that they work. And about the same time all this was going on, there were some issues in Mesa County about signature verification. And finally, overall, we just felt uncomfortable based on something called a defection rate, which is everyone who votes a full ticket of Republicans, there might be one candidate that you don't vote for, that you decide not to vote for on a party ticket. And what happened was the defection rates in Douglas County and statewide were really, really high for me. So meaning everyone who voted all Republican tickets, there were between 12 and 15% who decided to vote for Jared Polis instead of me. Now, granted, the Republicans I know, even if they didn't like me or didn't agree with me, would not vote for Jared Polis if they didn't want to vote for me. They would have voted for the Libertarian candidate or the Constitution candidate or just left the bubble blank, honestly. So that was weird too. So we have all these little things that are putting up our spidey senses. And so we do a press conference in September because we couldn't get the county clerk to meet with us. We couldn't get the Secretary of State's office to meet with us. It was very frustrating. So we said, let's just go to the press, directly to the press. So we stood in front of the Capitol, myself and the other folks that were involved in this audit that we did in Douglas County, and decided to tell the public what we'd found, specifically around the Wi-Fi remote access, the Dropboxes, and the 30,000 undeliverable ballots that seemed to be vanished into thin air. So we did this, and within, 24 hours, all the talking points went out. And before we knew it, the county clerks, even Republican county clerks, specifically the Douglas County Republican county clerk and Matt Crane with the Clerks Association and the Secretary of State's office, were all saying that I was reckless and I was affecting the election coming up in November, because this was in September before the presidential election. And I thought, well, these are all things that you guys can fix if you want to before the election. That's why we're coming out and talking about it. And we focused on those 3 things: the Dropboxes, the remote Wi-Fi access, and the U.S. Post Office. But of course, we were met with, disgust and rage that we had come out and spoken about it. And how dare we question the gold standard elections of Colorado? Well, fast forward about a month, and there was the BIOS password leak by Jetta Griswold's office, where 600 passwords were leaked onto the internet. And all of a sudden, what we had said and our questions around the election integrity in Colorado and the gold standard looked like fool's gold. So we called it out, and we kept calling it out until the election, and nothing was fixed. Nothing happened. Tina Peters still is in jail for doing a very similar thing, or being accused of doing a very similar thing to Jenna Griswold and what happened with her office. So I just want you guys to have a clear idea of the fool's gold that we face around our elections in Colorado and what you might be able to do to affect it. And we've come up with an idea that I'll talk more about in a minute. But I don't want you to feel helpless. Even in Colorado, where we don't control the Capitol, we don't control the Secretary of State's office, we don't have control with the legislature, the governor's office, the attorney general's office. But we do have a high percentage of county commissioners in this state that are Republican. I think it's about 60% of county commissioners, if you put them all on a spreadsheet, identify as Republicans. They don't all act like Republicans all the time, but there are some great county commissioners out there that do. So our thought was, what if we take this local? And what if all of us that are frustrated about election integrity and want to see a change, but haven't been able to do it through a ballot initiative, which costs so much money and is, I know, directed mostly by the title board, which is led by the Democrat Party, or, we can't get the legislature to move on this because it's, pretty much a super majority, not quite, but almost. And the governor doesn't want to fix this problem. The Secretary of State still claims it's a gold standard. So we're kind of scratching our head, like, what do we do? So with the power that the county commissioners have, we decided to talk to some attorneys and say, do they have the ability to make a difference at the local level and make some changes? And we found out, voila, they do, because they hire and fire the county attorney. The county attorney is very pivotal in decisions made by the county clerk. And it's important that if the county clerk is brave enough to make some of these changes, that the county attorney has their back, and so do the county commissioners, and of course the public. So we decided what we needed to do was give the public a way to go to their county commissioners and do a 2-minute speech at their commissioner meeting, or reach out to them individually and ask for a meeting to talk to them about things that could happen at the local level to make our elections better. Now, in a perfect world, we want the voter rolls cleaned up. We want Wi-Fi remote access removed from the machines. In a perfect world, we don't use machines because, as Elon Musk says, there's a lot of hanky-panky that can go on anytime there is a connection to the internet or a potential connection to the internet. So part of the problem is a lot of these clerks are like, we don't see any issues with the machines. We feel comfortable with them. But our perception in the public and among voters is their reality. And the reality is that a lot of voters perceive that there are problems in our elections, specifically with the machines. So the most important thing our elected officials can do at the county commissioner level, the county clerk level, is to restore trust in our elections. Because here's how this plays out in the elections. 71% turnout by Republicans in 22, I believe it was. 81%, I think, in last fall's election. So it was better in the presidential race, but that's still a couple 100,000 Republican voters who did not show up and turn their ballot in. This is not helpful in winning statewide elections or turning things around for the conservative movement. And you ask Republicans why they're not voting. It's kind of 3 categories. One is they don't like the choices on the ballot and they're not, happy with the candidate choices, so they don't vote. Number 2 is they've given up on Colorado and decided it's not worth my time or energy, even though the ballot lands literally in their mailbox, on their kitchen counter. Super easy to vote here in Colorado. Too easy. The third reason is they don't trust the elections. They don't think their vote matters. And so it's kind of a protest to not vote. So in order to get Republicans to show up to vote and unaffiliateds who identify as conservatives, we've got to restore trust in the elections. But here's the thing, guys. Even the Democrats, a lot of the Democrats don't believe the vote should be trusted, especially after Donald Trump won the election last fall. Funny how that works. So what we've got to do is restore trust. So our perception, how we perceive the election, is basically the the reality that the clerks face. Even if the clerks feel like they trust the elections, it doesn't really matter if voters don't show up because they don't perceive that they can trust the elections. So again, back to what we can do. Well, last fall, we did take action and create a website called coloradodropbox.com. And we created a citizen army of folks that care about the election that wanted to make sure that the drop boxes were effective. And we trained those folks on how to do it in a polite and respectful manner so that you're not intimidating the voters, but you could still make sure that those cameras were keeping close track of what was happening with those drop boxes. We did that. It was pretty effective. We had hundreds of people volunteer for this and take video and pictures and upload that and just generally make sure that people knew we were watching, that we were making sure that there was no funny business going on at the drop boxes. We also want to ask our county clerks to do what they can to make sure the voter rolls are clean. And there are some things that the county clerks can do that the Secretary of State won't do to make sure that there aren't illegal aliens voting in our elections, make sure that there aren't dead people in the voter rolls, make sure that people still live in the county and are able to vote or supposed to vote, and make sure that we can feel comfortable that our voter rolls are accurate. So we want to ask the county clerks and the county commissioners to make sure that's happening. So the drop boxes are secure, the cameras are well lit, they're pointed in the right direction, someone's monitoring the footage. Yes, that should happen. And the county clerks and the county commissioners can make sure that happens. We want to make sure that the voter rolls are as clean as possible, that the people that are supposed to vote are voting and the people who are not are not. They can do things to make sure that's better. Perhaps bringing in an outside expert, a forensic auditor, to look at the signature verification process, the score database, and the equipment that they're using. Perhaps that would be a good idea to restore trust. And boy, does Jenna Griswold not want us to do that. But at the end of the day, if we get some county clerks who have the kahunas to do it and county commissioners to back them up and a county attorney who's strong and knows the law and knows what they're allowed to do, and the public supporting this effort, perhaps we can do that as well so that we can feel good about those processes, signature verification, the machines that we're using, and the way that we're approving our elections or certifying our elections, which happens through the Canvas board. The other thing we want to make sure is that the post office is being held accountable, that they are actually making sure the chain of custody is as good as it can get. It's still not good, but if they could at least track all those undeliverable ballots and report them on the invoice, make sure that the clerks know exactly which ballots came back undeliverable, so that the public can know that too, and that they are accurately and making sure that they're giving them back to the clerk's office so that they can fix the problems for the next election. So there's just a few things, right? Also making sure that there's no Wi-Fi remote access in the machines. None, period. Take the cards out. It's not difficult. So again, let me go through. Make sure the drop boxes work effectively and are monitored appropriately. Make sure there's no remote Wi-Fi access cards in those machines. If you're one of those 12 counties, we really want to know from you that that's not happening. Make sure that the voter rolls are as clean as they can be and that people who are supposed to be voting are voting and people who are not are not. And then make sure that we bring in an outside expert, not the government, auditing the government. I love our clerks, many of them, but they shouldn't be auditing themselves, and neither should the folks that are involved in the election counting process. So let's get some experts in, make sure that they're qualified, that they're signing NDAs, they're not going to leak anything, they're the right people to do the job, and checking out the signature verification process, the score database, the machines, the way those are working and reporting, and just the whole process. Like, wouldn't that make us feel better about what's happening with our elections? We also want to make sure that at the drop boxes, people aren't putting in more than 10 ballots or coming back repeatedly and doing so. So if the cameras are working and someone's accurately watching that video content, and the public should be able to do that, then what happens when we do see something suspicious? Is anyone following up on that and making sure that nothing's happening? there. That would restore some trust as well. And perhaps what if we even put cameras in the counting rooms so that people could see what was going on as ballots were being scanned and counted? Of course, we're going to make sure there's no identifiable information there, but let's make sure that we feel good about what's happening in those rooms and that we're restoring trust in our elections. That's what this is all about, right? So how does this work? Like, how do we actually do this at a local level? So a few weeks ago, we sent out letters via certified mail and return receipt to all the county clerks asking them for a meeting. And who's we? So I volunteer with a group called Colorado Institute for Fair Elections. It's a great group of volunteers who do a lot of behind scenes work to make sure that our elections are run effectively and that we're asking the right questions in a bipartisan way. And they sent this letter to the clerks. We helped them, had some volunteers help them out, and we got return receipts. And so the clerks have received these letters. We've only heard from 2 clerks back, and we asked them, please contact us to see if we can meet to talk about how to best prepare for the 26 elections. And we know a lot about these issues that voters are care about. So we got 2 back. One is El Paso County, which the clerk has agreed to meet with us, gave us some great feedback on our questions, and we'll have that meeting in a couple weeks. The other one that responded was grumpy and didn't ask for a meeting or suggest that they would meet. We're going to follow up and make sure that they will, or at least keep asking. And we're going to report back to all of you guys on a scorecard that we're going to put on RockyMountainVoice.com, the website, under the scorecard section. And it's going to say exactly which clerks decided to engage with us and help us and talk to us about what's going on to prepare for the midterms, so that you know if your clerk is or is not cooperating. What if they're not? All right, we're going to arm you with talking points to go to the next county commissioner meeting where you can public comment. You can get 2 or 3 minutes, get up in front of your county commissioners and the public, most of them are live streamed, and ask your county commissioners to set a meeting with coffee. That's the nickname for Colorado Institute for Fair Elections, or with me or whoever they feel comfortable with, along with their county clerk and the county attorney if they'd like. And let's just have an open, honest conversation about where our elections stand and what power the county clerks have and the county commissioners have to actually do things that our Secretary of State won't do and our governor won't do and our legislatures on the Republican side can't do, but our Democrat legislators won't do. So we're going to put the power back to all of you, my audience, volunteers, people who care about election integrity, our listeners. This is time. It's time now to do this work, not right before the election. It's time now to do this work. We've got many, many county commissioner meetings, months to go before, it's too late to make some of these changes. So will you, number one, contact your clerk's office and ask them to respond to our letter? Just ask them to engage with us and talk to us about the election and how we can make it better. You're more than welcome to come to that meeting if you can get us that meeting. Happy to include you. Number two, will you go to your county commissioner meeting and get up and do a public comment and tell them you expect them to meet and to talk about this, or have their clerk do it? We haven't asked the commissioners to meet yet. We will soon if we haven't heard back from their clerks. And then finally, ask the county attorney, if no one else will, to do a meeting with us. You can do that in a public session. Most of it is live streamed, so you can talk to the public and tell the public what the concerns are. We will happily educate you on how to speak about this and how to ask these questions to the county commissioners, to the county clerk, to the county attorney. We're going to hear a lot of rumbling from the Secretary of State about this. I heard we were the letter was the talk of the town at the county clerks meeting, association meeting. But this is really, really important, you guys. It's important to verify that we can trust our elections, that we know our county clerks understand what our concerns are and how to fix them or address them. And I get why the county clerks might think that the elections are okay, because they trust the U.S. Post Office to send out the ballots, and then the next time they see the ballots are either as undeliverables returned back to them through the post office, or coming out of the drop boxes and put through the machines. There's this whole gap between the time the ballots are sent out until the time they go into the drop boxes. We call that chain of custody. The chain of custody stinks here in Colorado. We don't have a good grasp on what happens to those ballots between the time the post office sends them out and the time they are taken out of the drop boxes and put into the machines. So if you're a clerk and you say, gosh, everything matches on my end, all the reports match because we took them out of the drop box, we put them through the machines, and we got the right results, they don't know. They honestly don't know what happened to those ballots between the time the post office sent them out and the time they were put into the drop box. Actually, until the time they take them out of the drop box, because they don't even know how many ballots were put in the drop box or by who, because the cameras are so bad and you can't see the footage. Now, a couple of the counties are working on fixing this. Douglas County one, I think El Paso County is working on it. But you have every right as a citizen to say to these folks, I want these things fixed. I want to feel good about our elections. I want to feel like everything you're telling me, County Clerk, is true and accurate. Everything you're telling me, Jenna Griswold, Secretary of State, is accurate. Well, I have a tougher time with that. But we do have good people in our county clerk's offices that think they're doing everything right. And maybe they are, you guys, but we don't know the answer to that question because they audit themselves. They trust Jenna Griswold. They do what they're told by the Clerks Association, and they won't meet with us to talk about our concerns. And believe me, our concerns aren't willy-nilly out of the blue. They're based on us doing a very extensive audit and review in Douglas County, but also in all the counties that we looked at for the post office. And finally, with patriots across this great state that we've listened to and heard what their concerns are. So it's go time. We've got to get this fixed now before 2026, before the midterms. The midterms are everything, you guys. So I want to wrap up by telling you a little bit about where we're at numbers-wise here in Colorado. So as of last fall, we have about 4 million active registered voters in Colorado. About 2 million of those are unaffiliated. About 1 million Republicans, about 1 million Democrats. Those are round numbers. And everybody thinks the unaffiliateds are this big squishy middle that vote whichever way they feel like voting, and we've got to pressure them to vote a certain way or influence them. That's not the case. In the last several election cycles, unaffiliated voters vote pretty consistently, 60% Democrat and 40% Republican. Now, statewide candidates on the Republican side, are you listening to this right now? Clip this part, you guys, and tell them to listen to this. 4 million active registered voters. 1 million Republican, 1 million Democrats, 2 million unaffiliated that go 60-40 Democrat Republican. If you take the unaffiliated and split them and put them into their camps, I call them URs and UDs, we have a 500,000 voter gap for the midterms because turnout is not as great for the midterms as it is for a presidential race. 500,000 votes that we as Republicans have to win over, move, change, in order to win statewide. What does that mean? Well, if we only get 70% or so Republican turnout, 70% of Republican turnout is about 700,000 versus 300,000 people that stay home and don't complete their ballot out of that million. So 30% are staying home. That's 30% times a million. That's 300,000 voters that you candidates, statewide candidates, have to get to show up to vote. The other thing you've got to do is get another couple 100,000 of unaffiliated voters who typically vote Democrat. Last election cycles, they voted Democrat to show up to vote for you. How are you going to do that? What's your messaging? How much money do you have? What's your movement? Do you have a movement going? We have some really good people running. I think 16 now total people running for governor. And I think we have one person running for U.S. Senate. And I don't know if we have candidates running for Secretary of State as of this moment, or Attorney General, or Treasurer. So if we want to win statewide, which I hear everybody saying, oh, finally, Colorado's waking up. This is not what our polling's showing. What our polling's showing is that we've got a lot of work to do on the Republican side, including rebuilding our movement, which we're working on the Road to Red project, helping grassroots leaders across the state. We've got to get our messaging through, which is why we built Rocky Mountain Voice. That's why we are so committed to building that platform to get conservative voices out to the public, because the liberal media won't let us. We've got to have a lot of money. Jared Polis spent $33 million in our governor's race, and we had $5 million versus $33 million. It's not going to get better, folks. Bennett and Weiser are going to have just as many millions of dollars to spend against us. And donors are tired of investing in Republicans here in Colorado because we haven't been winning. So you've got to win their hearts and minds and pocketbooks by convincing them we can win. In order to win, we have to move 500,000 votes our way. We have to get Republicans to turn out, and we have to get unaffiliated voters who typically vote Democrat to vote our way. And yelling at each other and fighting within our party is not the way we're going to get that done. That's a whole nother podcast we'll do soon. I'll invite Brito on. I'll invite the naysayers on, and we'll have it out soon. But today I want you to get a reality check about where we're at for this coming midterm elections, and what we need to do to win. Now, when we look at the congressional races, we've got 4 seats out of the 8 in Colorado, which is kind of a miracle. That's cool. Like, we don't have anything statewide, and we don't have the legislature, but we have 4 of the 8 congressional races. Now, Gabe Evans is in Congressional District 8, which is North Denver, and that is going to be a super tight race. I think he won by 0.75%, and Yadero won by 0.75% in the previous 2 years before that. So Gabe's doing a very good job. He's threading a lot of needles right now, but it's going to be war in that district. And so that's one of the districts we have to worry about. The other one we have to worry about is CD3, which is Jeff Hurd over on the Western Slope in Pueblo. I think it's the largest geographical district, Mesa County, all the way down to Pueblo, or around to Pueblo. And Jeff's going to have a very tough battle on his hands because that district didn't win by a lot, and it slid over the last couple elections. So that means it won by the Republican candidate won by less and less of a percent. Same thing's happening in CD5, which is El Paso County. The amount by which we're winning is getting slimmer and slimmer and slimmer. And in CD4, Lauren Boebert's district, I think we've lost 14 points since, in the last 2 or 3 cycles, which is terrifying. They're coming after Douglas County so hard, and Loveland and Windsor, which are up on the top of the district. We've got a firm grasp on the Eastern Plains, but Douglas County and up that little corner of Larimer County, Loveland and Windsor is scary. How much the Democrats are putting into flipping this district, CD4, which is a staunch Republican district, or was in the past. It's not pretty right now, you guys. It's going to be bloody war. So those 4 seats, we've got to focus on those 4 seats and getting our congressmen and women across the finish line, because that has everything to do with helping our president, Donald Trump, keep his agenda going. So we've got to get 500,000 votes shifted our way statewide to have a chance at winning. We've got to focus on those 4 congressional districts and stop the bleeding in 3 of them, and fight really, really hard. Fight off the Democrats, because they smell blood in the water right now. They think they own Colorado. We know they don't, but we also have to feel good about the vote and election integrity. And that's why I committed this time with you, this podcast, to talking about how you can actually make a difference in election integrity. Don't just throw up your hands and say, my vote doesn't matter and we can't change anything here. That's not true. You can go to coloradodropbox.com and volunteer. coloradodropbox.com. We've got hundreds of people already that we're training on how to watch Dropboxes, but we're also going to train you on how to be election judges, poll watchers, how to go to your county clerk's office and ask for answers and ask for meetings, and we will help you. How to go to your county commissioner meetings and speak up in that 2 to 3 minutes you can do in public comment. You can write a letter to them. You can call them. You can hound them and say, you do have the ability to make a difference in our elections, Mr. County Commissioner, Mrs. County Commissioner. And we want you to do that. We want you to work with your county clerk and your county attorney to do so. And we've got a team of folks at COFFEE, Colorado Institute for Fair Elections, who will help make that happen. They're happy to go meet with you with your county clerk, your county commissioners, or your county attorney. So those are your marching orders, guys. We've got to stay very involved and engaged in those congressional races. If you live in one of those districts, volunteer. Call and volunteer for their office, or call your county GOP and find out who your precinct leader is. I like to say you are the leader you've been waiting for. You are the leader in your neighborhood. You are the leader in your county. You're the leader in your district. You're the leader in Colorado that we've been waiting for. But you got to start now, not next fall. All right, one more thing. I run a great Twitter community, X community, called Colorado Road Back to Red. Anyone who's on Twitter, I want you to request to join that. We're doing what's called the Fight Back in 5, something that you can do in 5 minutes that day to make a difference. It's basic blocking and tackling. I want you to subscribe to RockyMountainVoice.com and get our newsletter, which is, it's all chock full of truth about what's happening in Colorado. And we need to arm you with that truth as you talk to your neighbors, the person in the grocery store line, your kids, your grandkids, everyone. You need to know the truth about the issues that are happening in Colorado that you won't hear from the liberal media. So go to RockyMountainVoice.com. There's no fees. There's no subscription fees. We don't have paywalls. We don't have ads. It's not annoying like those other platforms. And we share lots of other conservative writers, podcasters, radio hosts, and outlets across Colorado. So you don't have to go to 14 different websites. You just go to RockyMountainVoice.com and sign up. You'll get a newsletter. You got to check your spam folder the first few times because they don't like anyone talking about Donald Trump or conservative values, especially here in Colorado. So they're going to dump you in the spam folder. But once you click through it a few times and read some of the articles, your email will say, all right, I cave. I'll let it through. And then finally, come to one of our events. We just held the most amazing event with 400 Patriots. We had Eric Trump come into town. It was awesome. We had a great big gala. And then the next day we did a workshop. Our Road to Red team did a workshop for grassroots leaders across the state, about 80 people or so, on how to tactically rev up their groups to win in the midterms. So we have so many ways you can pop in and engage. If you do run a grassroots group, or you're involved in the county party or your Senate district group or your precinct, and you want to know how to be more effective in leading that group, then you can email strategy@theroadtored.com and they will help you out. And there's no cost to any of that. If you want to tell the truth about what's happening in Colorado with your friends, neighbors, coworkers, subscribe to Rocky Mountain Voice. You can also write for us. If you have something you want to write that you're passionate about, we have an incredible editor, Jen, who can help you do that. We'd love for you to share our content on social media. We have our Mountain Minute video. The newsletter is called the Mountain Minute that you get, but then we do a video. Tori, my daughter, does it. She's great at this. It's like a 90-second to 120-second snapshot of the news for the day. And it's super easy to digest. It'll give you the big picture for what's going on, and you can share that on all the platforms: TikTok, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Truth Social, Instagram. It's on all of those. So you're going to follow us on all the platforms, Rocky Mountain Voice. You're going to share our content. You're going to subscribe to RockyMountainVoice.com. You're going to listen to Unleashed and share this podcast with everyone you know. You're going to go to ColoradoDropbox.com and sign up to be a volunteer around election integrity. You're going to sign up with your local party too, your county GOP. Britta's doing a great job of turning things around at the state level and providing resources and tools and tips to the local folks that run the party at the local level. So give it a chance. Get back engaged. Get involved. And one of the things I want to challenge you to do is encourage your friends and neighbors and coworkers that are unaffiliated right now, that lean conservative. Come home to the party. Come home for the midterms. Re-register as a Republican, and let's get busy turning our party and our movement around here in Colorado. I'm so grateful for all of you and to live in this wonderful state. I am so optimistic about our future. I know we can do this. It took the Democrats 20 years to turn Colorado from all red to all blue. It's not going to take us that long. We've got great people. We've got great momentum. We've got a great president who's doing all the right things, that's going to lead the way for us to turn things around here in Colorado. So thank you for listening to this latest episode of Unleashed. I look forward to seeing you again soon. And go out and get them. Go fight. This is our state. We want it back.